Imagine a world of glaciers, mammoths, and frozen plains, where survival demanded strength, intelligence, and ingenuity beyond anything we often credit to our ancient relatives. Long before Homo sapiens dominated the Earth, Neanderthals thrived across Ice Age Europe and Asia, not as brutish cavemen, but as superhumans perfectly adapted to their harsh environment. They hunted massive prey, crafted sophisticated tools, tamed fire, and cared for their injured and sick. Their creativity, social bonds, and strategic thinking rivaled our own, yet their story has been misunderstood for centuries. In this journey, we will explore the lives of Neanderthals, their strength, their genius, their culture, and the genetic legacy they left within us. Prepare to uncover the truth about the real superhumans of prehistory, whose echoes still shape the human story today. Sorry for the interruption. Where are you tuning in from? Drop it in the comments. 12,000 years before the rise of modern civilization, long before cities, roads, and empires, a different kind of human walked the earth, one built for the cold, the wind, and the relentless demands of Ice Age Europe and Asia. These were the Neanderthals, a species robust in every sense of the word, their bodies sculpted by millennia of survival in landscapes that would have crushed less resilient creatures. Their bones were dense, their muscles thick and powerful, their chests broad to accommodate the oxygen-hungry life of endurance hunters. They moved through glaciers and snowfields, with a confidence that spoke of intimate knowledge of terrain, climate, and prey. Where the cold could bite through flesh and frost could linger for months, Neanderthals thrived, carving a life from stone, ice, and bone. The world they inhabited was one of extremes, of sweeping tundras, frozen rivers, and forests etched in frost, where the wind could strip warmth from exposed skin in moments. Yet they were not merely surviving. They were masters of this environment. They read the land like a map, tracking the movements of mammoths, bison, and reindeer across valleys and hills. They knew where the animals grazed in summer, where herds migrated in winter, and which caves offered shelter from storms and predators. Every step they took, every decision they made, was guided by instinct honed through countless generations, an awareness of the natural world that seems almost supernatural to us today. Their bodies reflected the demands of their surroundings. Thick, heavy bones supported enormous strength, allowing them to wield spears, haul carcasses, and navigate the uneven terrain of Ice Age Europe. Their faces were wide, their noses broad, designed to warm the cold air before it reached their lungs. Their limbs were short and sturdy, conserving heat while allowing movement with surprising agility for their size. Each feature, each contour of muscle and bone, was an adaptation, a testament to evolution's meticulous craftsmanship. But they were more than physical marvels. Their survival was guided by keen intelligence, foresight, and careful observation. They noticed patterns in the land, in the seasons, in the behavior of the creatures around them. They understood which plants could nourish, which stones could be shaped into tools, and how fire could turn an otherwise inhospitable cave into a sanctuary of warmth and safety. This combination of mental acuity and physical prowess made them, in many ways, the superhumans of their time. As the snow drifted across valleys and the cold winds swept down from the mountains, Neanderthals moved steadily through their frozen world. They were giants, not just in size, but in capability, fully attuned to the harsh rhythm of Ice Age life. Where other species struggled, they flourished, setting the stage for a story of endurance, ingenuity, and survival that would echo through the millennia. The world of the Neanderthals was one of frozen expanses, jagged cliffs, and rivers locked in ice. A landscape both beautiful and unforgiving. They moved across glaciers as if the ice itself were familiar terrain, stepping over cracks and crevices with careful precision, their eyes constantly scanning for danger and opportunity alike. Each hunt, each journey across this frozen land, required not only physical strength but a deep, almost instinctive understanding of the environment. Snow and wind were not obstacles. They were part of the map, markers of seasons, indicators of animal behavior, and guides for navigation. In the biting cold, where storms could descend without warning, and frostbite threatened the unprepared, Neanderthals thrived. their movements confident, purposeful, and perfectly adapted to the harshness surrounding them. They hunted animals that would have intimidated any other predator, from massive mammoths grazing in icy plains to agile reindeer darting across frozen forests. Hunting was never a solitary endeavor. It required coordination, planning, and intelligence. Groups would track their prey over days, learning the rhythms of herds, anticipating movement, and choosing the right moment to strike. Ambushes were carefully calculated, using the terrain to their advantage, flanking from ridges or driving animals toward natural traps. Their weapons, carefully crafted from stone and bone, were extensions of their knowledge and skill, designed to pierce, strike, and immobilize. The sheer scale of the prey they pursued demanded teamwork, endurance, and courage, traits honed over generations in a world where survival was never guaranteed. But mastery extended beyond hunting. Neanderthals understood the subtleties of their environment in ways that went unnoticed by casual observers. They could read tracks in the snow to determine not just the direction, but the size, speed, and behavior of animals. They knew where seasonal plants would bloom, which stones were suitable for tool-making, and which caves offered shelter during violent storms. Even the behavior of the wind and the patterns of snowfall informed their movements, their decisions, and their planning. Every choice they made was influenced by an acute awareness of the landscape, the climate, and the creatures that shared it with them. Their survival depended on constant adaptation. They fashioned clothing from animal hides, insulated with fur and layered against the cold. They carried knowledge of fire from generation to generation, knowing how to ignite it in the harshest conditions and use it for warmth, protection, and cooking. Each day demanded vigilance, skill, and coordination, and Neanderthals excelled at all three. They were creatures of the ice and stone, perfectly in tune with the world around them, moving through frozen forests and glaciers with a mastery that can still inspire awe today. Their lives were hard, dangerous, and short by modern standards, yet in every sense, they were rulers of the frozen world they called home. The body of a Neanderthal was a marvel of natural engineering, sculpted over hundreds of thousands of years to endure a world that demanded strength, stamina, and resilience. Their chests were wide and barrel-shaped, a design that allowed their lungs to take in the maximum amount of oxygen with each breath, sustaining energy through long hunts and harsh winters. Dense bones ran through their arms and legs, unyielding yet flexible, able to bear the immense physical demands of hauling heavy prey or navigating steep, icy terrain. Every muscle, every ligament, every joint was honed by necessity, forged in the relentless rhythm of Ice Age life. Their limbs were shorter than ours in proportion, stocky and thick, conserving body heat and making movement more efficient in the freezing cold. Powerful shoulders and forearms allowed them to wield spears with precision, drag carcasses over frozen ground, and manipulate tools with extraordinary dexterity. Their legs, sturdy and strong, supported the weight of their bodies while allowing rapid bursts of speed or sustained endurance over rugged landscapes. Even their hands were remarkable, broad and strong, capable of exerting immense force without sacrificing fine motor control, allowing them to create tools, construct shelters, and prepare food with skill that belied the harshness of their environment. Their skulls carried adaptations just as striking. Prominent brow ridges and elongated faces protected their eyes and supported the muscles of the jaw, which were powerful enough to process a diet heavy in meat and raw plant matter. Large nasal passages warmed icy air before it reached the lungs, a subtle but essential adaptation that allowed them to breathe in freezing conditions without damage. Their teeth were large and robust, suited not only for grinding fibrous plants but also for processing tough meat and sinew, functioning almost as secondary tools in daily life. Beneath the surface, their bodies were designed for resilience. Dense bones reduced the risk of fractures during accidents or violent encounters, while their muscular framework absorbed shocks and stresses that would have incapacitated others. Fat and connective tissue were distributed in ways that protected vital organs and conserved heat, allowing them to endure temperatures that would overwhelm modern humans. Every aspect of their anatomy spoke to survival, an intimate balance of strength, durability, and efficiency. Yet, their power was not brute force alone. It was the harmony of body and environment, a natural synergy that allowed Neanderthals to move, hunt, and live in ways modern humans can barely imagine. They were endurance athletes, warriors, and survivors, their bodies a testament to evolution's precision. In every step, every breath, and every movement, their anatomy revealed a species engineered not just to exist, but to thrive in a world of ice, stone, and danger. Their strength, endurance, and resilience made them superhumans of prehistory, a living embodiment of survival perfected over millennia. Neanderthals were more than mere survivors of the Ice Age. They were architects of their own world, minds finely tuned to the challenges of a frozen and unpredictable environment. Their intelligence, often underestimated in earlier centuries, manifested not only in physical prowess but in remarkable ingenuity and problem-solving skills. Stone and bone were their canvas, and from these raw materials, they crafted tools with precision and purpose, each carefully designed for a specific function. Hand axes, scrapers, and points were not random. They were the product of observation, experimentation, and understanding, shaped to meet the demands of hunting, processing food, and surviving in an environment where mistakes could mean death. Their tool-making was an art form as much as a survival strategy. Each piece of flint was struck with careful calculation, producing sharp edges capable of cutting through thick hides, slicing sinew, or carving wood. The repetition and refinement of techniques over generations indicate planning and foresight, the ability to imagine a desired outcome and execute it with remarkable skill. These tools allowed them to extract every possible resource from the animals they hunted, the plants they gathered, and the landscapes they traversed. Nothing went to waste, and every innovation enhanced their efficiency and resilience. But their intelligence extended beyond the shaping of stone. They understood the properties of materials, the behavior of fire, and the dynamics of their surroundings. Fire was not simply a means of warmth. It was a tool for cooking, protection, and social gathering. By controlling flame, they could harden wooden tools, smoke food to preserve it, and maintain safety in a world teeming with predators. Shelters were constructed with care and knowledge, utilizing caves, rocks, and animal hides to create insulated spaces that resisted wind and cold. Every action reflected an awareness of cause and effect, of strategy and consequence. Neanderthals also exhibited innovation in social coordination. Hunting large Ice Age animals required communication, planning, and teamwork. Individuals understood roles within the group, anticipating movements, signaling at precise moments, and responding to each other with instinctive synchronization. Their minds operated as extensions of their environment, reading landscapes, predicting animal behavior, and adapting to changing conditions. This combination of physical skill and cognitive sophistication paints a picture of a species capable of remarkable creativity. They were engineers and problem solvers, not in the sense of modern technology, but in the sense of intelligence applied directly to survival. Every tool, every shelter, every fire reflected thought, planning, and the capacity to learn from experience. Neanderthals were not the brutish cavemen of myth. They were architects of life itself, shaping their world with ingenuity, precision, and a mind that could bend even the harshest Ice Age landscapes to their will. Neanderthals understood fire not merely as a source of light but as the very center of survival, a force that transformed the frozen world around them into a place where life could persist. Controlling flame required knowledge, skill, and timing. They knew how to ignite it from flint and tinder, how to maintain it through freezing nights, and how to use it in a way that stretched its warmth across their shelters. Fire became their hearth, their tool, and their protector. It kept predators at bay, softened the toughest hides for clothing, and cooked food in ways that unlocked nutrients otherwise inaccessible in raw form. The careful management of fire was a mark of intelligence, a recognition that mastery over a single element could multiply the chances of survival in a hostile landscape. Shelter was another triumph of adaptation. Caves provided natural insulation, protection from wind, and a secure base from which to explore the surrounding landscape. Within these caverns, Neanderthals arranged hearths strategically, selecting spots where smoke would escape yet warmth would linger. In regions without abundant caves, they constructed temporary shelters from bones, wood, and hides, understanding the principles of insulation and stability. They layered furs and hides to shield against frost and wind, creating spaces that retained heat and offered respite from the relentless cold. Each shelter was a careful balance between practicality and comfort, a testament to observation, planning, and hands-on experimentation. Animal hides were more than clothing. They were armor against the Ice Age itself. Neanderthals understood which furs retained heat, which leathers could be softened for flexibility, and how to sew them into garments that protected the body without restricting movement. Boots, cloaks, and tunics allowed them to move across snow and ice for hours without succumbing to frostbite. The clothing was a direct extension of their bodies, a layer of warmth that complemented their natural adaptations, making the cold manageable rather than lethal. The combination of fire, shelter, and clothing was a synergy that defined daily life. Even during the harshest winters, they could endure temperatures that would overwhelm less prepared species. These elements were central to their social cohesion as well. Gathered around a fire in a cave, groups could share warmth, cook meals, and communicate in safety, reinforcing bonds and passing knowledge from one generation to the next. Every flicker of flame and every carefully arranged hide spoke of intelligence, experience, and foresight. Neanderthals did not merely survive, they created a world where survival was sustainable. Fire, shelter, and warmth were not luxuries but essential tools, allowing them to thrive in an environment that demanded constant adaptation. In mastering these elements, they reshaped the Ice Age landscape into a home, turning cold, wind, and snow into companions rather than enemies. Their ingenuity and understanding of their surroundings allowed them to endure, and it is in this mastery that we see the true brilliance of Neanderthal life. Hunting for Neanderthals was not merely a means of survival, it was an intricate dance with nature, a combination of strategy, patience, and raw power executed with remarkable precision. They did not chase blindly. Every step, every gesture, and every observation was deliberate. Working in groups, they coordinated their movements, using the terrain to their advantage, surrounding herds of reindeer or driving bison toward natural traps like cliffs or ravines. This required foresight, planning, and an intimate knowledge of animal behavior. They studied tracks in the snow, interpreted the angle of broken branches, and listened for subtle sounds that revealed the presence of prey, all while remaining hidden from keen eyes and ears. Mammoths, giants of the Ice Age, were not hunted casually. They demanded the combined strength of several adults, the careful positioning of spears, and extraordinary courage. Neanderthals approached with patience, sometimes waiting for hours or even days to create the perfect opportunity. When the moment came, it was executed with precision, each spear thrown or thrust with an understanding of anatomy and leverage. Injuries were common, yet the hunters pressed on, knowing that success meant not only sustenance for the day, but survival for the entire group. Smaller animals, like reindeer or ibex, required a different set of tactics. Neanderthals used stealth, careful tracking, and bursts of coordinated effort to isolate individuals from herds. Ambushes were arranged near water sources or narrow passes where the animal's movement could be anticipated. Each hunter knew their role within the group, whether to flush, block, or strike. And all actions were synchronized through silent communication, gestures, and shared experience. Their intelligence was evident not only in the execution of the hunt, but in the preparation and observation that preceded it. Weapons were sophisticated and carefully crafted to suit the task. Stone-tipped spears, wooden clubs, and throwing sticks were all adapted to different prey and scenarios. Tools were maintained, sharpened, and carried with intention. They understood distance, angle, and force, and they adapted strategies based on the behavior of the animal and the landscape itself. Hunting was as much mental as it was physical, a combination of calculation, endurance, and courage. The success of these hunts sustained entire communities, providing meat, hides, and bones for food, clothing, and tools. It reinforced social bonds, as groups depended on cooperation, trust, and shared knowledge. Every hunt was a lesson passed down, a story of survival, intelligence, and strength, where skill and patience ensured not just a meal but the continuation of a lineage. In these hunts, the Neanderthals revealed themselves as Ice Age superhumans, combining raw power with strategic thinking in a way that allowed them to dominate a world of giants, predators, and frozen landscapes. The Neanderthal diet was a reflection of their environment, their ingenuity, and their extraordinary physicality. They were omnivores, consuming a wide array of foods that stretched from the dense forests to icy coastlines, from the frozen tundra to riverbanks teeming with life. Meat formed the backbone of their nutrition, sourced from massive Ice Age animals such as mammoths, reindeer, bison, and wild horses. These high-calorie meals fueled the immense energy demands of their muscular bodies, allowing them to hunt, travel, and survive in frigid conditions where lesser creatures would have faltered. Yet their diet was never limited to flesh alone. Plants played a critical role in their sustenance, providing fiber, vitamins, and essential nutrients that complemented the richness of animal protein. Berries, nuts, roots, and tubers were foraged seasonally, chosen with a keen understanding of growth patterns and toxicity. Neanderthals knew which plants could be eaten raw, which required cooking, and which could be stored for leaner months. Their knowledge of flora was matched only by their skill in integrating these resources into a balanced diet, an adaptability that ensured resilience against the unpredictable cycles of Ice Age ecosystems. Seafood, often overlooked in popular imagination, was an essential component of many Neanderthal communities, particularly those near coastlines, rivers, and lakes. Shellfish, fish, and aquatic mammals provided not only calories but vital fats and minerals that supported brain development and overall health. They crafted tools for fishing and shellfish gathering, sometimes returning to the same spots with astonishing regularity, demonstrating memory, planning, and strategic thinking. The consumption of aquatic resources reflects not just survival instinct, but intelligence and the ability to exploit diverse ecological niches. Their diet also reflected the realities of seasonality. During harsh winters, when plant resources were scarce, meat, fat, and stored foods became critical. They used every part of their prey, consuming organ meats rich in nutrients, boiling bones for marrow, and preserving hides and sinews for later use. This practice not only maximized energy intake but also reinforced their understanding of natural cycles and long-term planning, key to surviving in extreme climates. Eating was not merely functional, it was social. Sharing meat from a successful hunt strengthened bonds, reinforced group cohesion, and ensured that knowledge of food sources and preparation techniques was transmitted across generations. Each meal was a testament to cooperation, endurance, and the integration of intelligence and strength. Through this omnivorous, nutrient-rich diet, Neanderthals maintained the robust physiques, endurance, and resilience that made them Ice Age superhumans. Meat, plants, and seafood were more than sustenance. They were the foundation of survival, the fuel for ingenuity, and the building blocks of a body and mind perfectly adapted to one of the most demanding environments in human history. Neanderthals were not only survivors and hunters, they were caregivers, demonstrating compassion and practical understanding in a world where injury or illness often meant death. Archaeological evidence reveals skeletons bearing severe injuries, broken bones, deep cuts, and crushed limbs that had healed over time. Some individuals lived for years with disabilities that would have prevented them from hunting or foraging on their own, suggesting that others in their group provided food, protection, and assistance. This was not casual generosity. It was an organized response, a form of early medicine embedded in empathy and social cooperation. Healed fractures in Neanderthal remains show a remarkable degree of recovery. Limbs were set in ways that allowed bones to knit correctly, often accompanied by periods of reduced activity during healing. The process required observation, patience, and an understanding of how the body responds to trauma. Caring for a wounded individual meant sustaining them over long periods, protecting them from predators and exposure, and providing nutrition suitable for weakened conditions. Such actions indicate a cognitive awareness of cause and effect, as well as a capacity for forward planning and emotional intelligence. Evidence suggests that Neanderthals may have had knowledge of natural remedies, using plants with anti-inflammatory or analgesic properties. Traces of medicinal herbs found alongside their living sites imply they recognized certain plants' effects on pain, infection, or digestion. Whether through trial and error, observation, or oral tradition, they developed a system of care that went beyond instinct, incorporating both practical treatment and social support. This early medical practice was intertwined with empathy, providing care was not only a means of keeping the group functioning, but also an expression of social bonds and mutual dependence. Caring for the injured required adaptation on multiple levels. Hunters had to adjust strategies to accommodate those who could not participate, and group movements needed coordination to protect vulnerable members. Food sharing became essential, with the healthy sustaining the weak, demonstrating an understanding of interdependence crucial for survival in harsh environments. These actions suggest that Neanderthals operated with a sense of responsibility and foresight, prioritizing the survival of individuals and the cohesion of the group over immediate personal gain. Neanderthal care extended to chronic conditions as well. Some skeletons exhibit degenerative diseases or congenital deformities, yet these individuals survived into adulthood, indicating long-term support. The evidence paints a portrait of a species capable of both physical mastery and social sophistication, balancing strength with compassion. In a time before formal medicine, Neanderthals healed through observation, ingenuity, and shared effort, laying the foundations for the most fundamental of human traits, empathy. Their capacity to care for one another, to preserve life even in the harshest conditions, reveals a depth of understanding and humanity that challenges every stereotype of the Ice Age caveman. Neanderthals were not merely practical beings of survival and strategy. They were also creators, capable of symbolic thought and artistic expression that reveals a complex inner life. Archaeological discoveries across Europe have uncovered cave engravings, pigments, and personal ornamentation that challenge long-held assumptions about prehistory. These artifacts demonstrate an appreciation for aesthetics, an ability to imagine beyond the immediate needs of survival, and perhaps even the beginnings of ritual practice. In caves like those at La Roche-Cotard and Gorham's Cave, abstract patterns carved into stone suggest deliberate design, lines and shapes etched with intention rather than accident. These were not casual scratches. They were a visual language, an early form of communication, or perhaps a personal or communal signature. Pigments were another tool of expression. Red and yellow ochres, charcoals, and other mineral-based colors were collected, ground, and applied to surfaces, sometimes on cave walls, sometimes on bodies or tools. Their use required preparation and understanding, as well as an awareness of permanence and effect. The choice of color, placement, and repetition implies aesthetic sensibility. These pigments may have been used for decoration, to mark territory, or to convey meaning, reflecting cognitive sophistication. The deliberate creation and application of pigment demonstrates that Neanderthals were capable of abstract thought, recognizing symbols as representations of ideas, identity, or spiritual beliefs. Ornamentation of personal items also reveals attention to detail and the desire for self-expression. Shells, teeth, bones, and animal claws were modified and worn as pendants, necklaces, or adornments. These items were not purely utilitarian, they were statements of individuality or social affiliation. Crafting them required skill, dexterity, and an understanding of materials, while wearing them indicated social awareness and possibly group identity. These adornments suggest Neanderthals engaged in behaviors that extended beyond immediate survival, actions motivated by culture, identity, and perhaps shared ritual. Some researchers propose that these artistic endeavors were tied to ceremonial or spiritual practices. Patterns repeated in caves, pigments placed in deliberate arrangements, and the careful crafting of ornaments could have formed part of rites, storytelling, or communal activities, reinforcing cohesion and shared values. Even if their meanings remain largely enigmatic, these expressions indicate the presence of imagination, foresight, and reflection. Neanderthal artistry provides a window into their minds, revealing a species capable of abstract thinking, aesthetic appreciation, and symbolic communication. They were not only engineers of survival but also architects of culture, bridging the physical and the conceptual, leaving traces of creativity that speak across tens of thousands of years. Through engravings, pigments, and ornamentation, Neanderthals demonstrated that their world was not only endured but contemplated, shaped, and celebrated with intellect, intention, and artistry. Neanderthals were not silent observers of their world. Evidence from skull morphology, the hyoid bone, and vocal tract reconstructions suggests that they possessed the anatomical capacity for complex speech. Their communication extended far beyond simple grunts or calls. It encompassed nuanced vocalizations, subtle gestures, and shared understanding within tightly knit groups. This ability was essential for coordinating hunts, teaching survival skills, and navigating the dangers of the Ice Age environment. Language, in its earliest forms, was a lifeline, a bridge between minds that allowed them to transmit knowledge, plan collectively, and solve problems together. The structure of the Neanderthal hyoid, remarkably similar to that of modern humans, indicates that they could produce a range of sounds necessary for articulated speech. Coupled with a brain wired for social interaction and abstract thought, these vocal abilities made possible a complex system of communication that may have included naming individuals, describing locations, warning of danger, and recounting past events. This cognitive capacity allowed information to travel across generations, creating continuity in survival strategies, tool-making techniques, and environmental understanding. The ability to share knowledge in precise ways was likely one of the key factors that allowed Neanderthals to thrive in challenging climates over tens of thousands of years. Gesture complemented speech, enhancing clarity and reinforcing meaning. Hand signals, facial expressions, and body movements were integrated into daily life, enabling individuals to convey intention or instruction even when distance or environmental conditions interfered with sound. Coordinated group behaviors, particularly during hunts or collective tasks, depended on this combination of speech and gesture. Each signal was part of a sophisticated repertoire, ensuring that everyone understood roles, timing, and strategy. This form of communication demonstrates not only practical intelligence but also social cohesion, empathy, and anticipation of others' responses. Storytelling, though invisible in the archaeological record, can be inferred from symbolic behavior, patterns of tool use, and communal activities. By conveying experiences through speech, gesture, and possibly even early forms of symbolic representation, Neanderthals could teach younger members about predator behavior, seasonal migrations, and the use of plants or medicinal resources. This transmission of knowledge allowed them to adapt to changing environments with remarkable efficiency and to accumulate wisdom collectively rather than relying solely on instinct or trial and error. Neanderthal communication, therefore, was a dynamic interplay of voice, gesture, and cognition. It was both functional and social, enabling them to survive the Ice Age while building a culture of learning, cooperation, and shared understanding. Their language was not merely a tool for survival but a vehicle for thought, memory, and imagination, linking individuals into communities capable of facing the harshest conditions with intelligence, foresight, and resilience. Neanderthals lived in small, tightly knit communities where survival depended not just on individual strength but on the collective effort of the group. These were not random gatherings of individuals. They were extended families, bonded by kinship, shared experiences, and mutual dependence. Within these groups, children were nurtured, the elderly were protected, and tasks were distributed according to ability, need, and circumstance. Every member had a role, and the success of the group relied on cooperation, communication, and shared responsibility. Child rearing was central to Neanderthal social structure. Infants, completely dependent for survival, were cared for collectively. Mothers provided nourishment, while older siblings, fathers, and other adults contributed by carrying, protecting, and teaching essential skills. This communal approach ensured that children grew up with the knowledge, strength, and resilience necessary to navigate a dangerous world. Play, imitation, and observation were not mere pastimes, they were critical components of learning. Through social interaction, young Neanderthals absorbed hunting techniques, tool-making skills, knowledge of edible plants, and the intricacies of group coordination, preparing them to eventually contribute to the survival of the community. Daily life was a web of responsibilities shared across the group. Men and women hunted or foraged, but their efforts were coordinated to maximize efficiency and safety. Elderly or injured members participated in tasks suited to their capabilities, whether processing hides, maintaining tools, or tending to fires. Cooperation was not optional. It was embedded in the social fabric, enforced by the necessity of survival in a harsh environment. The physical demands of life, combined with the complexity of coordinating hunts and managing resources, required trust and mutual accountability. Groups could not afford dissent or negligence, yet evidence suggests that Neanderthals maintained these bonds with patience and understanding, balancing strength with empathy. Conflict resolution and social cohesion were essential for maintaining group stability. In small, enclosed populations, interpersonal tensions could threaten survival. Gestures, vocalizations, and shared rituals likely helped reinforce relationships and establish norms. Caring for the sick or injured, distributing food equitably, and teaching younger members were both practical and social strategies, ensuring that no one was left vulnerable and that knowledge was transmitted across generations. Neanderthal communities were, in essence, microcosms of human resilience. They combined physical strength, intelligence, and empathy into an interdependent system that allowed individuals to thrive in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Within these tightly knit groups, survival was more than the sum of individual effort. It was the product of collective care, cooperation, and the shared commitment to endure and flourish together. Families and communities were the backbone of Neanderthal life, demonstrating that even in prehistory, human connection was as vital as strength or skill. Neanderthals were not passive inhabitants of their environment. They were keen observers, skilled interpreters of the landscapes they traversed. Every river, valley, and hillside was a map of resources, dangers, and opportunity. Their survival depended on an intimate understanding of seasonal cycles, animal behaviors, and the shifting dynamics of their habitats. This mastery of the land was born of necessity, honed over generations through experience, observation, and collective knowledge. They knew where herds of reindeer, bison, or mammoths would migrate, tracking subtle signs like footprints, broken branches, or disturbed snow. Their ability to anticipate these movements allowed for coordinated hunts, reducing risk and increasing efficiency. Knowledge of terrain enabled them to select ambush points, construct traps, and maneuver in ways that maximized their formidable physical strength. Hunting was not brute force alone. It required spatial awareness, timing, and strategic planning. The landscape itself became both a partner and a challenge, demanding respect and understanding in equal measure. Seasonal changes dictated every aspect of life. Neanderthals read the subtle cues of nature, the timing of plant growth, the behavior of prey, and the availability of water. In spring, they moved to forage for fresh plants and to intercept migrating animals. Summer brought an abundance of resources, allowing them to stockpile and prepare for harsher months. Autumn was a time of intensive hunting and processing, securing meat, hides, and tools before the onset of winter. When snow blanketed the land, they relied on caves, fire, and carefully chosen hunting strategies, demonstrating foresight and adaptability in environments that could quickly become unforgiving. Their understanding of geography extended beyond immediate survival. They knew which caves offered shelter, which slopes provided vantage points, and which rivers could be crossed safely. Rocks and trees were not merely obstacles but markers, indicators, and tools. They could use the natural landscape to their advantage, creating temporary structures, manipulating paths, and even storing resources for later use. This level of environmental literacy suggests a deep cognitive awareness and an ability to anticipate both opportunity and threat. Neanderthal expertise in navigating the land also reflects a sophisticated memory and learning system. Knowledge of migration patterns, seasonal cycles, and foraging techniques was shared across the group, passed from elders to youth, ensuring continuity and adaptability. Each generation inherited a living map, refined and expanded through observation and practice. By reading the land with precision and intuition, Neanderthals transformed the harsh Ice Age environment into a world they could master. They combined physical prowess with intelligence, foresight, and cultural knowledge, turning survival into a form of expertise. In doing so, they became architects of their own existence, shaping their lives around the rhythms, challenges, and gifts of the terrain they called home. Mastery of the landscape was not merely survival, it was the essence of Neanderthal ingenuity and resilience. Neanderthals faced a world that was changing faster than any generation could adapt. The Ice Age, with its shifting glaciers and unpredictable climate swings, reshaped landscapes and ecosystems on a scale that demanded constant adjustment. Rivers shifted courses, forests retreated and expanded, and the animals they depended upon moved unpredictably or disappeared entirely. These environmental pressures created a relentless test of survival, forcing Neanderthals to continually innovate, migrate, and reorganize their communities to meet the demands of a world in flux. Their habitats, once expansive and rich in game, began to shrink. Glacial advances confined populations to smaller areas, while interglacial periods allowed forests to spread into previously open hunting grounds, changing the composition of available prey. Species that had been reliable sources of meat, hides, and tools became less abundant or moved to new territories, forcing Neanderthals to explore unfamiliar regions, take greater risks, and develop increasingly sophisticated strategies to track, trap, and hunt. Survival became a balancing act, weighing the rewards of exploration against the dangers of unknown landscapes. At the same time, another species entered the equation, Homo sapiens. These newcomers shared the same ecological niche, hunting the same animals and foraging the same plants. Evidence suggests that early modern humans may have introduced competition for critical resources, occupying fertile territories, or outcompeting Neanderthals with technological innovations and social networks that extended over wider areas. Encounters between the species may have ranged from cautious avoidance to direct conflict, adding a new layer of pressure to an already precarious existence. Disease, too, likely played a role in their decline. Living in small, interconnected groups, Neanderthals were vulnerable to outbreaks, particularly when climates shifted, forcing migration or crowding into limited shelters. Their immune systems, adapted to stable conditions over millennia, may have struggled to cope with pathogens introduced by changing animal populations or by Homo sapiens moving into overlapping territories. Even minor epidemics could have disrupted food procurement, weakened individuals, and altered the social cohesion critical for survival. Despite these challenges, Neanderthals were remarkably resilient. They adapted clothing, tools, and hunting strategies, built shelters, and maintained social networks to care for the weak and injured. Yet the convergence of climatic instability, habitat fragmentation, and competition created a threshold that could not be indefinitely overcome. Populations dwindled, genetic diversity declined, and isolated groups became increasingly vulnerable to random events or environmental pressures. Facing extinction was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual erosion of resilience. Each generation struggled against forces both natural and social, fighting to maintain the lives and culture that had sustained them for tens of thousands of years. Their disappearance was the result of compounded challenges, a reminder that even the most robust and resourceful species can be vulnerable when the environment, technology, and competition shift beyond their capacity to adapt. As Neanderthals navigated the shifting landscapes of Ice Age Europe and Asia, they eventually encountered another species that would profoundly influence their fate, Homo sapiens. These encounters were not uniform. They varied across time and space, sometimes involving cautious coexistence, sometimes direct competition, and occasionally leading to interbreeding. The presence of modern humans introduced new pressures, opportunities, and dynamics, reshaping the trajectory of Neanderthal populations and leaving an indelible mark on the genetic legacy of humanity. Competition with Homo sapiens was inevitable in overlapping territories. Both species relied on similar resources, game, plants, and shelter, and both required space to sustain viable populations. Modern humans brought innovations in technology, hunting strategies, and social organization, which may have allowed them to exploit resources more efficiently. Neanderthals, although highly skilled and adapted to their environment, faced challenges in maintaining territory and food security when modern humans arrived with new methods of coordination, trade, and communication. This competition likely led to localized displacement, the fragmentation of Neanderthal groups, and increased stress on their communities. Yet encounters were not solely antagonistic. Evidence suggests that Neanderthals and modern humans sometimes coexisted peacefully, sharing knowledge, territory, or even ideas. Tools and cultural practices show signs of cross-influence, indicating that interaction between the two species was not purely competitive. These moments of coexistence hint at the potential for mutual observation, learning, and perhaps even collaboration in hunting or resource management. The relationship was complex, a blend of rivalry, curiosity, and adaptation. Interbreeding represents the most intimate form of contact. Genetic studies reveal that non-African modern humans carry small percentages of Neanderthal DNA, a lasting legacy of encounters that occurred tens of thousands of years ago. These genetic traces influence immunity, metabolism, and other physiological traits in contemporary populations, a biological testament to the connection between species. Interbreeding was not merely accidental. It suggests repeated interactions over generations, highlighting the permeability of species boundaries and the blending of lineages under circumstances of proximity and survival. The human factor, therefore, was pivotal in the story of Neanderthal extinction. It was not a simple narrative of conflict or annihilation, but a multifaceted interaction with modern humans that encompassed competition, adaptation, and genetic legacy. Through these encounters, Neanderthals were challenged, influenced, and partially absorbed, their survival strategies tested against the innovations and social networks of Homo sapiens. Their genetic and cultural footprints endure, a subtle yet profound reminder of a world where two intelligent species met, interacted, and intertwined in ways that shaped the future of human evolution. Neanderthals were more than hunters, toolmakers, and survivors of a harsh Ice Age world. Archaeological evidence suggests they possessed a profound awareness of life, death, and the relationships that bound their communities together. Their burial practices, once considered too rudimentary to indicate intentionality, now reveal a species capable of reflection, planning, and perhaps even spiritual thought. The care with which some individuals were laid to rest, accompanied by tools, animal bones, or pigments, demonstrates that Neanderthals recognized mortality and the importance of social identity. Sites across Europe provide glimpses into these early funerary behaviors. Skeletons have been found positioned deliberately, often with limbs arranged in ways that indicate more than mere disposal of the dead. Some graves contain evidence of careful placement within caves, utilizing natural alcoves or protective layers of soil and stone. These arrangements suggest that the living considered both the physical and symbolic needs of the deceased. The act of burial itself required time, effort, and attention, indicating that Neanderthals assigned value to their dead, viewing them as members of the group whose passing warranted respect. Accompanying the bodies were often objects of significance. Stone tools, animal remains, or even pigments have been discovered alongside Neanderthal skeletons, hinting at symbolic behavior. These items may have held practical value, serving as tools or provisions for the deceased, but the recurring presence of such objects suggests deeper meaning. They may have signaled social status, personal identity, or connections to the natural world. The use of pigments, particularly ochre, further points to symbolic expression. Red ochre appears in burial contexts, smeared on bones or surrounding areas, indicating an aesthetic or ritualized consideration of death. The intentionality behind these actions implies abstract thought, the capacity to imagine concepts beyond immediate survival, and perhaps the beginnings of early belief systems. The treatment of the dead was likely tied to social cohesion. By acknowledging mortality, Neanderthals reinforced the bonds of the living community, transmitting values, collective memory, and lessons through shared ritual. Burial practices may have strengthened group identity, reminding each member of their place within the social network and the continuity of the community even as individuals passed away. Caring for the dead required cooperation and coordination, as well as an understanding of the emotional impact of loss. Evidence of healed injuries in living individuals, combined with the care taken in burials, suggests that Neanderthals experienced empathy and compassion, extending these qualities into their treatment of the deceased. Some burial sites reveal repeated use, with successive interments in the same area, implying that certain locations held enduring significance. These cemeteries or ritual spaces indicate a continuity of practice and memory, a recognition of ancestors, and perhaps even early concepts of territory or sacred space. Such behaviors bridge the practical and symbolic, blending survival needs with emerging cognitive and cultural complexity. Through their burials and symbolic gestures, Neanderthals displayed an awareness of mortality, a sense of social identity, and the capacity for abstract thought. These practices suggest that they were capable of emotional depth, community cohesion, and perhaps early spiritual contemplation. Death was not merely an endpoint, but a moment imbued with meaning, shaping both memory and culture. In these acts, Neanderthals emerged not as brutish survivors, but as thoughtful beings navigating life, community, and the profound mysteries of existence. Neanderthals were remarkable engineers of their own survival, continually adapting their tools and technologies to meet the ever-changing challenges of Ice Age environments. Their innovations were not static, they evolved over tens of thousands of years, reflecting a capacity for observation, experimentation, and problem-solving that rivaled that of early Homo sapiens. Every weapon, fire management technique, and shelter design was a testament to their intelligence and an essential component of their resilience. Their tools, meticulously crafted from stone, bone, and occasionally wood, reveal a level of precision and ingenuity that modern observers can still appreciate. Mousterian toolkits, characterized by flake tools, scrapers, and points, were carefully shaped to suit specific tasks. Scrapers maintained hides for clothing or shelter, points and blades enabled efficient hunting and butchering, and specialized implements allowed for processing plant materials and constructing shelters. These tools were not merely functional, their production required planning, foresight, and dexterity. Neanderthals understood the properties of the raw materials they selected, exploiting the natural fractures of flint and other stones to create sharp, durable edges. Hunting technology evolved alongside their knowledge of animal behavior. Wooden spears, often fire-hardened for strength, allowed them to engage larger prey at close range, relying on skill, teamwork, and strategy rather than speed alone. Evidence suggests that Neanderthals coordinated group hunts with precision, driving herds toward ambush points and utilizing terrain features to maximize advantage. Their tools were extensions of their bodies, enabling them to control their environment and exploit resources that would have been impossible to manage through brute strength alone. Fire management was another cornerstone of technological adaptability. Neanderthals harnessed fire not only for warmth and protection, but also for cooking, tool-making, and shaping their living spaces. Hearths were constructed in caves and open-air sites, carefully maintained to provide consistent heat and light. Charred remains and ash layers indicate repeated use over generations, suggesting that fire was an integral part of daily life, and its management required both skill and foresight. They learned to control intensity, direction, and duration, using fire to process hides, preserve food, and extend their activities into the long, cold nights of the Ice Age. Shelter construction demonstrated a similar sophistication. In addition to caves, Neanderthals built temporary structures using wood, bone, and animal hides. These shelters provided protection against wind, snow, and predators, allowing them to inhabit a wider range of environments than would have been possible otherwise. Strategic placement of shelters reflected an understanding of terrain, seasonal wind patterns, and proximity to resources. They created spaces that were not merely functional but optimized for survival, comfort, and communal living. The evolution of tools, fire, and shelters reflects the adaptability and ingenuity of Neanderthals. Each innovation emerged from necessity, observation, and experimentation, demonstrating cognitive flexibility and a deep understanding of cause and effect. Their ability to solve complex problems in challenging environments was a defining characteristic of their species. Far from the stereotype of brutish cavemen, Neanderthals were inventive, resourceful, and remarkably capable engineers of survival, continuously refining their technology to thrive in a world defined by cold, danger, and unpredictability. Neanderthals were not only physically formidable but also remarkably intelligent, demonstrating innovation and resourcefulness in every aspect of daily survival. Their genius is evident in the tools they designed, the strategies they employed, and the subtle technologies that allowed them to thrive in some of the harshest environments humans have ever inhabited. From sewing needles to specialized hunting implements, these early humans displayed a level of cognitive sophistication that challenges outdated notions of prehistoric simplicity. One of the clearest indicators of their intelligence lies in the development of fine tools for precise tasks. Bone and antler were shaped into needles and awls, which allowed Neanderthals to stitch hides together for clothing or shelter. This innovation was critical for enduring the freezing temperatures of Ice Age Europe and Asia, providing insulation against conditions that could easily be lethal. Crafting such tools required dexterity, patience, and foresight. It was not enough to simply survive day to day. They had to plan for the weeks ahead, predict seasonal challenges, and produce items that would maintain their well-being over time. Specialized hunting tools also reveal sophisticated problem-solving skills. Points, scrapers, and thrusting spears were carefully designed for specific prey, reflecting a deep understanding of animal behavior. Evidence suggests that Neanderthals anticipated the movement patterns of large game such as mammoths, bison, and reindeer, setting up ambushes and coordinating group hunts with precision. This required not only physical strength but strategic thinking, communication, and cooperation across individuals, demonstrating that their intelligence was both practical and social. These tools were extensions of their understanding of the environment, crafted to exploit resources efficiently and safely. Neanderthals also adapted materials creatively to suit different purposes. Stones were selected based on flaking properties, bones were carved to create durable implements, and wood was shaped to fashion spears or structural supports. Each choice reflects careful observation and experimentation, a trial and error process that eventually produced highly effective tools. This kind of iterative innovation indicates a capacity for abstract thought, the ability to envision a finished product, manipulate raw materials, and improve techniques over successive attempts. It was intelligence applied directly to survival. Even their daily routines exhibited ingenuity. The ability to plan meals, process plant and animal resources, and maintain fire required a keen awareness of timing and environmental cycles. They managed seasonal migrations, stored resources, and optimized energy expenditure in ways that ensured the survival of small, closely knit groups. Each aspect of their life demonstrates problem-solving at multiple levels, from immediate needs to long-term survival strategies. These signs of genius also extended into social and symbolic behaviors. The use of pigments, personal ornamentation, and ritual practices indicates abstract thinking, self-awareness, and communication skills. Neanderthals were capable of representing ideas, marking identity, and perhaps even transmitting cultural knowledge across generations. Their intelligence was multidimensional, spanning the practical, the creative, and the social, making them true masters of their environment. Through sewing needles, hunting tools, and subtle innovations in everyday life, Neanderthals reveal themselves not as brutish cavemen, but as adaptive, resourceful, and intelligent beings. Their genius was expressed in survival, in social cohesion, and in the ability to shape their world to meet their needs with remarkable skill and foresight. Neanderthals may have vanished from the earth tens of thousands of years ago, but their presence endures in the genetic fabric of modern humans. Scientific breakthroughs in genomics have revealed that non-African populations carry between 1 and 2% of Neanderthal DNA, a subtle but profound reminder of encounters that took place long before recorded history. This genetic legacy is not a mere historical footnote, It continues to influence immunity, physiology, and a range of traits, quietly shaping what it means to be human. The discovery of Neanderthal DNA in our genome has rewritten our understanding of human evolution. It was once assumed that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals were entirely separate species, with interactions limited to competition or avoidance. However, genetic analyses have shown that interbreeding occurred multiple times, leaving a lasting imprint on our species. Each segment of Neanderthal DNA within our chromosomes is a vestige of intimate encounters between these two groups, a biological record of a relationship that combined curiosity, coexistence, and perhaps necessity. One of the most significant areas influenced by this legacy is immunity. Genes inherited from Neanderthals appear to enhance responses to pathogens, equipping modern humans with defenses against viruses, bacteria, and other microbes. This adaptation likely provided a survival advantage as Homo sapiens expanded into Eurasian territories that were previously occupied by Neanderthals, regions where pathogens were unfamiliar and potentially deadly. Certain immune-related gene variants can be traced directly to Neanderthal ancestry, demonstrating that their biological contributions were not incidental but actively shaped our ability to survive in diverse environments. Neanderthal DNA also affects physiological traits, from skin and hair characteristics to metabolism and even circadian rhythms. Some inherited variants influence keratin production, contributing to hair texture and skin resilience. Others affect fat storage and glucose metabolism, traits that may have been advantageous during periods of cold climates or food scarcity. The genetic imprint of Neanderthals provides a window into the pressures and adaptations of our distant relatives, showing that evolution is not linear but a complex web of interaction, exchange, and inheritance. Beyond the physiological, Neanderthal genetics may subtly influence behavioral and neurological traits. Research suggests links between certain gene variants and susceptibility to mood disorders, sleep patterns, and immune-related neurological responses. While these effects are not deterministic, they highlight the enduring interplay between our biology and that of our extinct cousins. Every human carries fragments of a story written in DNA, a narrative that traces the mingling of species, the survival strategies of the past, and the echoes of evolutionary history within our own bodies. The genetic legacy of Neanderthals reminds us that they were not simply a separate chapter in human history, but active participants in the shaping of our species. Their influence persists invisibly in every breath, every heartbeat, every immune response, and even in subtle aspects of our behavior and physiology. Through DNA, Neanderthals remain present, a quiet force that continues to shape the resilience, adaptability, and diversity of modern humans. In understanding this inheritance, we gain insight not only into who they were but into who we have become. For centuries, Neanderthals have been cast in popular imagination as brutish, primitive, and intellectually inferior, but this view is profoundly misleading. The evidence from archaeology, anatomy, and genetics tells a different story, one that portrays them as resilient, intelligent, and social beings, fully capable of thriving across the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Europe and Asia. Their apparent simplicity is a reflection of misunderstanding, a misreading of the adaptations and accomplishments that enabled them to survive for hundreds of thousands of years in environments that would have challenged even modern humans. Neanderthals were not only physically strong but cognitively sophisticated. Their ability to craft a variety of tools, maintain fire, build shelters, and hunt large, dangerous game required planning, problem-solving, and foresight. Each action was intentional, carefully executed to maximize survival and efficiency. They coordinated complex hunts, driving mammoths and bison toward ambush points, demonstrating teamwork, communication, and strategic thinking. Such feats demand both intelligence and social cohesion, qualities far removed from the caricature of the clumsy, thoughtless caveman. Their social structures were equally impressive. Neanderthals lived in small, tightly knit communities where cooperation was essential. They cared for sick and injured members, as evidenced by healed fractures and chronic injuries, showing empathy, patience, and understanding of human vulnerability. They raised children, shared responsibilities, and ensured that the survival of each member contributed to the strength of the whole group. In an environment where survival depended on collaboration, their social intelligence was not incidental, it was central to their success. Artistic and symbolic behaviors further dispel the myth of Neanderthal primitiveness. Cave engravings, pigments, personal ornamentation, and the careful placement of graves indicate abstract thought, aesthetic sensibility, and perhaps even early spiritual contemplation. These actions reflect a consciousness capable of representing ideas, expressing identity, and considering concepts beyond immediate survival. Their creativity was not limited to practical innovation. It encompassed symbolic and social expression, revealing a depth of cognition often overlooked in popular narratives. Anatomically, Neanderthals were optimized for survival in extreme climates. Their muscular bodies, wide chests, and robust limbs allowed them to endure cold, fatigue, and the physical demands of hunting large game. Their physiology was complemented by clothing and shelters, including animal hide garments and strategically located cave homes. They controlled fire for warmth and cooking, engineered temporary structures for protection, and adapted to seasonal cycles with remarkable efficiency. Every aspect of their daily life demonstrates intelligence applied directly to environmental challenges. Even their genetic legacy challenges outdated perceptions. Modern humans carry fragments of Neanderthal DNA that influence immunity, physiology, and behavior, reminding us that their survival strategies were successful enough to leave a lasting imprint on our species. This inheritance is a subtle but enduring testament to their competence, adaptability, and skill. Neanderthals were not brutish failures of evolution. They were highly capable superhumans of the Ice Age. Their strength, intelligence, sociality, and adaptability allowed them to flourish for tens of thousands of years in a world defined by cold, danger, and uncertainty. Misunderstood for far too long, they deserve recognition as one of humanity's most extraordinary achievements, a species whose legacy persists not only in our genes, but in the story of human resilience and ingenuity. The story of Neanderthals does not end with their disappearance. Though their species vanished from the Earth around 40,000 years ago, their legacy resonates across landscapes, genomes, and the very trajectory of human history. The echoes of the Ice Age reverberate not just in the archaeological record but in the lives of every human who carries a fragment of Neanderthal DNA. These remnants serve as quiet reminders of a species that was both extraordinary and intimately intertwined with the ancestors of modern humans. Neanderthals shaped the lands they inhabited. Their presence can be traced through the scars left in caves, stone tools scattered across frozen plains, and the carefully curated sites that reveal patterns of habitation, hunting, and survival. Hearths, shelters, and campsites tell stories of strategic adaptation, of beings who understood their environment in profound detail. They molded landscapes through hunting practices, fire management, and movement patterns, creating subtle ecological footprints that influenced plant and animal life. Even as glaciers advanced and retreated, Neanderthals adjusted, leaving behind a narrative of resilience imprinted in the terrain itself. Their genetic legacy is equally profound. Modern humans outside Africa carry traces of Neanderthal DNA that affect everything from immune system function to skin and hair characteristics to metabolism and disease susceptibility. These inherited fragments are not passive relics. They have contributed to our ability to survive and adapt in diverse environments. Some gene variants inherited from Neanderthals help fight pathogens, reflecting a history of exposure and adaptation to Eurasian diseases. Others influence physiological traits that echo the demands of Ice Age life. In this way, Neanderthals continue to shape humanity, an invisible yet enduring presence in every body, every breath, and every heartbeat. Beyond the biological, Neanderthals left an indelible mark on human culture and cognition. Their symbolic behaviors, use of pigments, ornamentation, and burial practices reveal a species capable of reflection, creativity, and social complexity. They were the original storytellers, the early engineers of social cohesion, and perhaps the first philosophers of human existence. Their innovations in tools, shelters, and fire management demonstrate a profound understanding of cause and effect, of problem solving, and of planning for the future. Every artifact and site they left behind is a testament to ingenuity, adaptation, and intelligence. Even their extinction holds lessons. The pressures of climate change, competition with Homo sapiens, and dwindling habitats remind us of the delicate balance required for survival. Their disappearance was not a failure but a transition, a reminder of the dynamic forces that shape life on Earth. In their absence, the echoes of their lives persist in our genes, our cultures, and the landscapes we inhabit. They were not lost to history. They became part of the living story of humanity. Neanderthals were more than a chapter in prehistory. They were masters of a harsh world, superhumans of the Ice Age. Resilient, intelligent, and social, their influence remains embedded in the rhythm of human life, in our genetic makeup, and in the stories we uncover from caves, bones, and tools. Though the Ice Age receded and their species disappeared, the mark they left endures, reminding us of lives lived with ingenuity, courage, and adaptation. In studying Neanderthals, we confront not only their story but our own, tracing the threads of survival, innovation, and resilience that continue to shape humanity today. Their echoes remind us that human history is not a single narrative but a tapestry woven from the strength and brilliance of many species, each contributing to the story of who we are.